Today I want to continue on with a video study I did around April 2020 called the Coronation Ceremony of the Beast. In that video we talked about how fear is used to manipulate people, and we looked at current events in this world. We talked about the big lie, many big lies going on, and the situation here in this time is very alarming for those with eyes to see and ears to hear, and for those who do not have eyes to see and ears to hear. They look at the things going on today, they don't recognize what is actually happening here. There are things of this world that are hidden to most people. They are veiled. And Jesus Christ warned about watching, that these things don't come on you by surprise, because as a snare it shall come on all those who dwell on the earth. To stay sober and to have our eyes open to things. God says in the scriptures, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, and because they do not follow my commandments, they do not follow my law, they are destroyed because of that. It is a very serious thing, but we are in times where people are fast asleep and they do not recognize things for what they are. And we're going to look into some things today that you have to draw your own conclusions from. You have to pray on it, you have to go to God, but these times we are in are very grave indeed, and we must take heed and hear the sound of the trumpet and understand these things spiritually. We are in a spiritual war. There is so much false prophecy in this world. To not recognize, because of that false prophecy, people do not recognize the times they are actually in. They do not see what is actually happening in the moment. Rather, they are waiting for certain things to happen all the time. Certain, whatever their, people look to great wars, physical wars that are going to happen, or great, cataclysms, physical things that are going to happen, and they do not actually see the spiritual war that they are in if they are not taking heed to the commandments of God and the things that God teaches in His Word, the things that have happened in history. If you don't understand history and learn from history, you're doomed to make big mistakes and go astray. And the things God says in Scripture, things that have happened in times past, are very important in understanding the times we're in today. There's nothing new under the sun. And I want to start out in Matthew 24, verse 23. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall so show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. If it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Now, it says, behold, I've told you before. So, for God's elect, His called, His chosen, His faithful, He shows what is happening in their time, at this time. But he warns that these things will be so great that they could, if it were possible, deceive the elect. Now, Satan, the devil, is the great counterfeiter of God. He makes himself God. He is the God of this age, this time period. He's the God of this world. He is a powerful being, and most people do not realize that they are worshiping him in their actions if they are not following the law of God. If they are lawless, It talks about the lawless one in Scripture. We've talked about this many times. 2 Thessalonians, the lawless one, the spirit, the power in the world, the mystery of iniquity being unleashed in the end time without restraint. Aleister Crowley, who was a Satanist, he was a 33rd degree Freemason, he started all kinds of secret societies and religions aside from Masonry, and so much of his occult beliefs and practices are followed in high positions of power today. Freemasonry, international groups who run society today. And it's also in Hollywood, which is just a brainwashing factory, the music industry. These things get to people of all ages, and they create a worldview for people, a worldview that is not true. And people are indoctrinated in the education system of this world, which is also run by occultists. And that is not understood by so many. People in high positions of power today are occultists. They practice the hidden mystery religion of Babylon. As it says in Revelation chapter 17, they eat her flesh and burn her with fire. We talked about this in the past. They eat the flesh of Babylon, meaning that's their doctrine. We, as followers of Christ, we eat his flesh and drink his blood. It is symbolic of eating from him at his table. We are fed from him to understand all things. They understand Babylonian mystery religions, which is the mother of harlots. This has been since the beginning. As we talk about the beast, the woman who rides the beast is Babylon, mystery Babylon. And all these empires are the beast, the governments. So you have the religious system over the governments, riding the governments throughout 6,000 years of history. And we talk about this and expand on this prophecy all the time. It is so misunderstood because, again, there's so much false prophecy in Christianity, because so much of Christianity, what calls itself of Christianity, is lawless. And Yeshua the Messiah said, "Think not I've come to abolish the law or the prophets." And the prophets tell us the story of things that have gone on in the past and why people have gone into idolatry, God's people, and been led astray because not following the law of God and knowing God and understanding who he is. And Satan comes along and he mingles in all these his paganism, his false religion with Christianity, and it becomes a big mess. And that is the world today. Big mess. It is spiritually Babylon, save those who understand and who are being fed at the table of the Messiah. And we look into these things today. Christ warned about the situation in the end, about how deceptive it would be. Deceptive in the end time. It's all about deception. So we have to be wise as serpents. We have to understand the motivations of what is actually happening here. And the occult motivations, they want a new age, okay? It is the counterfeit millennium of Christ. It is a new age of Aquarius, where Mystery Babylon is based on the worship of the heavens above, the sun, moon, and the stars, and it's demonic. It's from fallen angelic beings and demons. This came about before the flood, and man was taught all manner of false things. And the worship of the heavens and the courses of the heavens and astrology and all this is a big part of what Mystery Babylon is and what these people behind the scenes actually worship. So God is going to destroy this entire system in the end, but it is pertinent that we understand what is going on in our time so we are not deceived. And we see also in Luke chapter 21, verse 25, "There shall be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. So signs in the sun, moon, and stars. Very important. There are signs everywhere. There's always signs going on. Last year, in December of 2020, we have this great sign in the heavens that can be easily overlooked to professing Christians if they don't understand the occult beliefs behind this, and the occult beliefs having to do with a new age and age of Aquarius, the counterfeit millennium that Satan has concocted here, that is going to take away many people if they are not on the rock in the end. And it is, as we talk about in prophecy, the eighth head that is of the seven, Revelation chapter 17. It is the spirit that comes out of the bottomless pit. It was and is not, and yet is again in the end. It is the occult Alpha and Omega. It is the satanic Alpha and Omega, last head of the beast, because it was the first head. It is of the seven, but it is also the eighth. It was the first spirit pre-flood. That's the first kingdom. And it was wounded by the sword, the word of God. And it comes around again in the end, the mystery of iniquity unleashed. Now, so much, when you look into these things, has to do with, again, the worship of the heavens, and particularly Saturn worship. And this is where things get very interesting and also very disturbing. So Christ said there'd be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. Luke chapter 21, verse 25. And upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity. So people today, all nations right now, are in upheaval over the situation going on. All the nations perplexed over what is happening in this world. And they don't really understand it from the right perspective, because they're being given a false narrative. Very important. Very important. We talked about this in the first part, and I suggest if you have not listened to that, we did that first part at the beginning of all this insanity, pretty much around April of 2020. So go listen to that first. But we see here, I want to read an article, give you some more perspective on this. Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, winter solstice 2020. Now, so much of what is called Christian in this world worships and keeps Christmas, which is not Christian at all. It is pagan in origin, and it is from the Saturnalia, and that is in itself the worship of Saturn. Okay? And Jesus Christ was not born in December. We talked about that before. And it doesn't talk about worshiping Christ. One of the appointed times of Jehovah is not about Christ's birthday. So we're not talking about worshiping the birth of Christ. But this is symbolic of the sun god. You know, these things come from ancient paganism, the Roman Empire, the Greeks before that, and so on and so forth, way back into antiquity in Babylon. And it's part of Mystery Babylon, the spiritual fornication that goes on throughout the ages in this world. And it's under the guise of Christian, but it is not Christian at all. So Christmas, really at this time of year, has to do with Saturn. And we look at this article here, which I'll read a little bit of it. And it's about a sign in the heavens. You know, God gave sun, moon, and stars to be light on the earth, and to be for signs, seasons, days, and years. Okay? And many people do not understand the true creation today. I don't want to get off track, but it really all goes together here. You must understand the things that God speaks of from the very creation to understand what is going on today. And in Genesis, God gave the sun, moon, and the stars for everyone to have light on the earth, and it's for time. It's for times and seasons, and specifically Jehovah's appointed times. And we are restoring all that now. We are going back to the proper calendar. We are understanding the truth of the creation now and coming out of all the lies that have been foisted upon us by the God of this world. Jehovah is calling his people and showing his people all things in this time for those with ears to hear and eyes to see. So, signs and seasons, days and years. But the kingdoms, the nations, the unbelieving nations, God showed clearly that they went astray from the very beginning, and they ended up worshiping the creation rather than the creator. And this is the origin of astrology and things of this nature that come from Mystery Babylon. Worshiping the heavens, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and looking at them, the powers in the heavens, and that is what they are. That is what God says they are. Again, today people have been told something drastically different. Their education it's just a brainwashing education, and it's not even showing people at all. This is why people are so lost in this time, because the end times truly are. There truly is great delusion and deception, and it comes from not following God specifically. And God shows how He made everything, what they are. But what happens to people when they go astray from the Word of God? They listen to the word of man. They make flesh their arm. They think man knows better, and man says, "Oh, all these things in the heavens are, they're totally different from what was known in the past. They're physical, they're material, and the delusion of space and space travel and all this comes about, and NASA, and we've talked about that so much, how that is going to factor into this end time. We've talked about that for over 5 years now, so I'm not going to go over all that again, but I want to make it clear that the nations have gone astray from way back, and they've worshipped the creation and not the creator. And they have made the things in the heavens, the powers in the heavens, their gods, the fallen angels, their gods, the demons, their gods, to get knowledge from that system instead of the true God, and they worship the heavens. And it is no different today for people in high positions of power that have control over this world. They do not believe how you believe. In fact, when you look into it, they are very much still practicing all the ancient form of Mystery Babylon today, which is astrology, astrotheology. They bring his consciousness is evolving, so on and so forth. They've been deceived by the devil in these things. It says in the book of Daniel that the last beast will change times and laws. So part of that changing times and laws, and we've talked about that as well, has to do with making people believe in large, great distances in time and space, and not understanding the chronology of time in the Bible, changing God's time, changing His laws, changing time in general, getting people used to the idea that things are billions and millions and hundreds of thousands of years old, and that is a big delusion in this end time. And it's been taught to people in school by physical evolution, but this is also an occult principle, a hidden principle of spiritual evolution as well, and how man goes through these cycles of time, and that there's a new age, a new golden age of Aquarius coming. And again, that is Satan's counterfeit millennium, where he comes as an angel of light and rescues everyone from this darkness which the world is currently in. But he's working the dark and the light. It's dualism, it's Gnosticism, it's Satanism, it's Luciferianism. But let me read this article. I hope you understand what I'm speaking of here. You know, these things, we have to understand them in this time. We really do. Because as I get into this, you're going to realize the situation here, and it's shocking when you understand, when you actually have eyes to see. Um, it's a shocking big picture of things that are happening here on a worldwide scale that we must understand. So, signs in the heavens, and I'll read this article here. It says, and this is online. It's from Astrologer Ann. Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, winter solstice 2020. It says December 21st, 2020, your appointment with destiny. Solstice, Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, and biggest shift in 20 years, 200 years, 400 years, 600 years, 2,000 years, and 26,000 years. Whoa, okay. So here we go. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of December 2020 is the biggest shift in 20 years, 200 years. Okay, I read that already. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction this month, arriving the same day as the winter solstice on December 21st, is the biggest news in decades and in centuries and even millennia. It's that big. Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, what is it? The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction occurs when the planets Jupiter and Saturn come together or conjoin in the same degree of the same zodiac sign. Jupiter and Saturn do this every 20 years. It is a special alignment called a grand conjunction, sometimes called a great conjunction. Their meetings matter to everyone because a grand conjunction starts a new 20-year era on Earth. So again, the occult religion at its base, at its most fundamental, is the concept of as above, so below. The things in the heavens, the powers in the heavens, have an effect on what goes on the earth, and they follow the heavens in that way, and they do rituals at certain times. This is how these things are worshipped throughout history. We're going to see that. Now, it's one reason, continuing on with the article here, we feel change in the air, and these 20-year intervals, and suddenly see light at these 20-year intervals, and suddenly see life differently and start pursuing new interests, ideas, and relationships. Society changes, and our purpose within it adjusts. Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, how does it affect us? In astrology, Jupiter and Saturn are called the social planets because they have a powerful effect on how humanity builds and organizes society. We see a restructuring of society today because of current events that are manipulating society. Society is being led down a certain path today. So this all goes with their occult astrology as well. With each grand conjunction, we see a shift, sometimes quite dramatic in society and culture, influencing and guiding everything from the arts and relationships, politics and economics, to spirituality and communication. The last Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was in Taurus. The last happened May 28, 2000, the astrological sign Taurus. Since then, humanity has seen a marked increase in focus on material concerns such as money and banking, economic security and control, and global financial disparities between the haves and the have-nots. This period also sparked greater concern over classic Taurus themes including Earth and her well-being, animal welfare, nature, conservation, and climate change. A very big deception going on today, climate change. They want to have, the United Nations, we could talk about that, but there's plenty on the site about that. Jupiter 2020, Jupiter-Saturn conjunction arrives on the December solstice. The next grand conjunction will occur in Aquarius, bringing a far different energy. I think Daniel, God of forces. This is the end time beast. This is a God of forces and energies. It's like a Star Wars religion, basically. The Force, it's a God is not a God of a law, a personal God, but God is in everything. He's in everyone. He's everywhere, and it's a force, and we can all be God and have this force when our consciousness expands and our third eye opens up, and the flower blooms, and we go into the age of Aquarius. And this is part of this end time deception that gets a hold of people. It's New Age, and so many people are asleep to how major this is and what is going to come out of this time we're in now. So while every grand conjunction has significant impact, this one is extra special because it's coming exactly on the day of this year's winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. In southern latitudes, it occurs at summer solstice. Winter solstice 2020 occurs on December 21st. And here's an interesting date here, December 21st. You take 12/21 and you get 33, which is the high degree of masonry, which is running the international governments today, along with other occult societies and families, and this is all the front organization for all this is the United Nations, but we talked about that as well. So we're getting into we're living in the seventh head. It's coming to the eighth head of the beast, and then Christ returns and destroys the governments of this world for their idolatry. But people are deceived in this end time, and it's very subtle. The devil, the Satan, the devil, he comes as an angel of light. So take heed. Every winter solstice is an astrological event because it is defined as the day on which the sun moves into the zodiacal sign Capricorn. Capricorn is the goat. In 2020, the sun enters Capricorn at 4:03 a.m. U.S. Central Time on Monday, December 21st. That officially makes this day the winter solstice. Winter solstice is one of 4 power days each year. The 2 solstices that begin winter and summer are 2 equinoxes and begin spring and autumn. In the case of the winter solstice, it's a moment of stillness during the year when we experience the day of least daylight, and the sun appears to stand still in the sky, very low on the horizon. After the winter solstice, the amount of daylight steadily increases each day, giving us a natural metaphor for our spiritual lives. Just as the external light increases, so must our inner light increase as we evolve inwardly over the course of each year throughout our lives. This is New Age doctrine. This is New Age thought. This is the age of Aquarius language. Everybody's a hippie, and it's all going to be nice, and flowers are blooming. Everybody's got flowers in their hair and singing together. Jupiter-Saturn conjunction and winter solstice timetable. If you go outside, you know what? This part here, let's see. Let's skip down a little bit. Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, age of Aquarius begins. While every grand conjunction is powerful and important, this one packs an extra punch. In fact, several extra punches. It is the biggest shift, not only in 20 years, but 200 years, 400 years, 600 years, 2,000 years, and even 26,000 years. So, again, remember, changing times and laws of the Most High. It's going after foreign gods, foreign things, not understanding the truth, not understanding God's times and seasons, but something else. It truly is a shift for the ages and of the ages. Jupiter, Saturn shift to air signs. First element change in 200 years. When Jupiter and Saturn meet every 20 years, they get together in the zodiac signs of the same element each time for 200 years, with an occasional exception in a different element. For example, starting in 1802, the two planets began forming grand conjunctions in Earth signs. They kept meeting in the sign Virgo, Taurus. They kept meeting in the sign Virgo, Taurus, and Capricorn up to 2000, except for 1980 and 81, when they were joined in Libra. This Earth sign period coincided strongly with strongly materialistic concerns on Earth, including the rise of the Industrial Revolution, the growth of huge hierarchical multinational companies, and banking and financial enterprises. Before that era, Jupiter and Saturn met in fire signs from 1603 until the 1802 shift to Earth. That period coincided with American and French revolutions and other fiery, enthusiastic impulses to change society to align with spiritual ideas. This year's change to air brings us the great air mutation, which will refocus humanity away from earthly and solely material concerns. Instead, society will shift toward a greater focus on all things associated with the air element. With the exception of 2159, when Jupiter and Saturn will conjunction will occur in Scorpio, the next 200 years will see these grand conjunctions in air signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Humanity will experience a shift in society, with more attention on the mind, as well as communication, ideas, partnerships, and other relationships, and futuristic concepts and technology. Jupiter-Saturn 2020 conjunction, closest since 1623. The 2020 grand conjunction also is special because it's the closest one since 1623. Every grand conjunction brings Jupiter and Saturn together exactly in the same degree. Minutes and seconds of are within the same sign of the zodiac. This means these planets are aligned horizontally in the same place in the sky. Usually, though, these planets are separated vertically, one above the other, with a fair amount of space in between, as seen from our vantage point on Earth. In 2020, however, Jupiter and Saturn will align not horizontally, but vertically. In astrology, that means that they'll be at the same amount of declination, which indicates their vertical position in the sky. They'll be just 6 minutes of arc, or 0.1 degree, away from each other on the vertical axis, so from Earth, it will appear as if they are nearly on top of each other. That close positioning makes the 2020 grand conjunction all the more noteworthy and powerful. More easily visible, super close grand conjunction since 1226. Although the 1623 conjunction was nearly exact, people on Earth would not have seen it because Jupiter and Saturn was too close to the Sun at the time, making for poor conditions for stargazing. In 1226, however, Jupiter and Saturn's grand conjunction in Aquarius was not only super close like the one in 2020, but much more easily visible than in 1623. Jupiter-Saturn conjunction 2020, first in Aquarius in 600 years. The Jupiter-Saturn alignment carries another special feature. It is the first to occur in Aquarius since January 25th, 1405. So it's been more than 600 years since we've had a grand conjunction with the same type of airy Aquarian energy. The 1405 meetup was the final one in the air before the grand conjunction shifted to happening in water signs. Before this new era that's starting, the last air cycle of conjunctions occurred from 1226 through 1405, with a get ready one also in air in 1186. I was like, you know, getting used to the fact that that's going to happen. Besides all these notable features, the 2020 Grand Conjunction holds distinction as the final celestial push out of the age of Pisces and into the age of Aquarius. So this is, again, New Age thought, you know, man's evolution through the zodiac, where the movements of the heavens above control man's consciousness below and evolve it into a golden age, basically, an age of enlightenment, and man becomes more in tune with his God nature. It's a mockery of the Holy Spirit by Satan the devil. It's a mockery of the millennium. It's Satan's great counterfeit, and it leads a lot of people astray. And this is powerful stuff. And you're going to see there's some very dark things behind this. Indeed. According to ancient sages, it says the great year, 26,000 years. According to ancient sages who first recognized and studied the great ages of humanity, Earth and humans evolve according to a rhythm of cycles. One of the most important cycles involves the great year, which lasts about 26,000 years and includes a series of 12 ages, one for each zodiac sign. Within the great year, we move through the zodiac signs in reverse order and spend about 2,000 years in each sign. Pisces age began about 2,000 years ago. And they say Jesus Christ is a New Age master, and that, you know, the age of Pisces was represented by the fish, and they make all kinds of connections with Christ, but it is the false Christ. It is a New Age Christ that they promote, and it's not the truth of the Bible at all. About 2,000 years ago, the world entered the Pisces age after having spent a couple of millennia in the Aries age. This shift was evident to ancient astrologers because they noted important planetary changes and alignments. A Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Pisces in May 7 BC, a stellium in Pisces in February 7 BC. A stellium is a grouping of 3 or more planets in the same sign. The 7 BC stellium consisted of Sun, Moon, as well as Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn, all in Pisces. The Christmas star conjunction Some people are calling the December 21st, 2020 Grand Conjunction another Christmas star because it coincides with Christmas time, because it recalls the story of the Magi who saw the star in the east and came to see the child born in Bethlehem. Again, we know that Christ was not born around this time of year in December at all, and they're totally confused. They have no clue the truth, and they follow, again, Babylon. It's the pagan times and seasons, which have been under the guise of Christianity for a long time now, but it's the Saturnalia. It always has been. It's the worship of Saturn, or the worship of Baal, as you're going to see, or Moloch, and it all boils down to Satan, or Lucifer. Skipping down a little bit here. Aquarius age begins now, for real. Now it's time for us to make the shift of the ages into Aquarius. For the next 2,000 years, we have the opportunity to develop our skills in detachment, especially emotionally, philanthropy, and discovering the inner truths about ourselves. This age promises a new vision of utopia, that place of ideal perfection, and ways to create it. To succeed, we must respect our dreams and wishes and cultivate hope and idealism If we do, Aquarius energy will be available to help in the form of electric excitement about the future and human potential, new ideas for solving problems, and a commitment to fostering individual genius to benefit collective evolution and well-being. Oh, it sounds amazing. Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, first age of Aquarius in 26,000 years. Finally, this year's Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is important. Historically, it kicks off the first age of Aquarius in 26,000 years. New Age spirit came alive in the 1960s. The New Age spirit came alive in the 1960s. For about 50 years, we've been in the process of moving toward that New Age that so many people have spoken of and worked toward. In February 62, a powerful Aquarian stellium occurred that brought together all 7 classical planets in the zodiac sign Aquarius, the Sun and Moon, along with Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The Aquarian energies of the 1960s were in the air, and great and hopeful change began around the world to liberate people as former colonies became sovereign nations. Civil rights legislation passed in the United States, and young people around the world rebelled against a society that no longer aligned with their well-being or ideals they held for how life could be. To those who lived through those years, recent decades may have felt as if early idealism is being lost, in part to challenges the Aquarian changes stemmed from a lack of grand conjunction in Aquarius to help support the eye-popping stellium of 1962. Yet that Aquarius age spirit is set to flower once again. Now, nearly 50 years later, we'll finally get the missing piece, along with even more help in anchoring the Aquarian mindset and ideals. Jupiter and Saturn will meet in Aquarius in December 2020, the first of a new air cycle within a new Aquarian age. Together, they're ushering in the first Aquarian age since 26,000 years ago. We're making history. Welcome to the age of Aquarius. Welcome to the electrical high potential of the age of Aquarius. It's truly a new age, and it's our time to shine. We lift up ourselves out of the water of Pisces and the earth of the last 3 years of working so hard in Capricorn, and earthly focus of 200 years into the light and breeze of a 200-year cycle within a 2,160-year air age. The winds are at our backs. It's time to set sail. Lift off toward your most idealistic hopes, dreams, and wishes. So, New Age thought, Age of Aquarius, is so big in this end time deception, and we have to talk about Saturn and Jupiter. Jupiter is Zeus, Saturn, Kronos, Saturn of the Romans, Kronos of the Greeks. The planet is known in the occult as the Black Star. David Bowie sang about that before he died. It's known as the Black Hole Sun, the Black Sun, and it is also known as the Grim Reaper. We could go on and on about Saturn and its symbolic meaning. The hexagram is a symbol of Saturn on the flag of Israel. It is the symbol of the beast, the 666, the as above, so below, the up-pointing triangle and the down-pointing triangle interlaced, creating 6 triangles, 6 points, and the hexagon inside, 6 sides. It is the mark of the beast. In the book of Daniel, we see the beast being in that land, the land of Israel, in the end time, and it has been there for a long time now. Judaism, unknowingly, again, is part of, as Christianity is unknowingly worshiping Saturn because they are not following the law of God and they do not know Jesus Christ, Yeshua the Messiah, the true Messiah. So they worship Saturn is worshipped in the Islamic world. The black cube, the cube of Mecca, the black cube is a symbol of Saturn. That cube fits inside the hexagram, and the black cube is a symbol of Saturn. And the black cube is also used in Operation Warp Speed in this time. And Operation Warp Speed was the rush to get out under emergency use, 9/11 emergency use. I say 9/11 symbology in our time here, to get a shot out to the people as soon as possible. And that shot was administered around what I just read to you in December 2020, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Now, what is a black cube or a Pandora's box doing on the symbology for Operation Warp Speed? This is a symbol of Saturn. It is a symbol of, in the occult, these black cubes are around the world, by the way. When you start looking into this stuff, it has to do with time, the Grim Reaper, and these people are bringing about a ritual, and it's not a good thing. And we talked about that in part 1. This is just what I'm telling you now. You should really take seriously and connect these dots and understand what I'm saying here. Otherwise, you could be deceived, and your life depends on it, frankly. So take heed. We see, again, this connection with Saturn in the Bible, and how ancient Israel went astray into Baal worship and the worship of Moloch. We go to Deuteronomy chapter 4. Verse 15, Take you therefore good heed to yourselves, for you saw no manner of similitude on the day that the Lord, that Jehovah, spoke to you in Horeb out of the middle of the fire, lest you corrupt yourself and make you a graven image. The similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flies in the air, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth, unless you lift up your eyes to the heavens. And when you see the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, you should be driven to worship them and serve them, which Jehovah your God has divided to all the nations under the whole heaven. But the Lord has taken you, Jehovah has taken you, and brought you forth out of the iron furnace, even out of Egypt, to be to him a people of inheritance, as you are this day. So, again, worshiping the host of heaven. This is the practice of the nations that were around Israel. Israel fell into this worship. Deuteronomy chapter 8. Verse 11, beware that you forget not Jehovah your God in not keeping his commandments and his judgments and his statutes, which I command you this day, lest when you have eaten and are full and have built goodly houses and dwell therein, and when your herds and your flocks multiply, and your silver and your gold is multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, then your heart be lifted up, And you forget Jehovah your God, which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage, who led you through that great and terrible wilderness, wherein there were fiery serpents and scorpions. You see the war today. It's a spiritual war. You have to have eyes to see. Book of Revelation, the 5th and 6th trumpet are about serpents and scorpions. Talked about the 6th trumpet. We are in it right now. The symbols and signs are everywhere. And if you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you will take heed to what I'm saying today. Serpents, liars, manipulation, in order to cause destruction and death. Who led you through that great and terrible wilderness where there were fiery serpents and scorpions and drought, and there was no water, who brought you forth water out of the rock of flint, who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers knew not, that he might humble you, and that he might prove you to do good at your latter end. And you say in your heart, my power and my might of my hand has gotten me this wealth. And that's what people say today, isn't it? Well, you shall remember Jehovah your God, for it is he that gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish you and his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is this day. And it shall be, if you do at all forget Jehovah your God, and walk after other gods, and serve them, and worship them, I testify against you this day, that you shall surely perish, as the nations which Jehovah destroyed before your face, so shall you perish. Think about that now. We're going to look at what these nations worshiped, what they still worship today, and what they are bringing about today. The nations which the Lord your God destroyed before your face, so shall you perish, because you would not be obedient to the voice of Jehovah your God. Deuteronomy chapter 18. When you come into the land which Jehovah your God gives you, you shall not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall you not be found any among you, anyone that makes his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination to Jehovah. And because of these abominations, Jehovah your God does drive them out before you. You shall be perfect with Jehovah your God. For these nations which you shall possess listened to observers of times and to diviners. But as for you, Jehovah your God has not suffered you to do so. Observers of times. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 29. When the Lord your God shall cut off the nations before you, where you go to possess them, and you succeed them and dwell in their land, take heed to yourself that you be not snared by following them. After that they be destroyed from before you, and that you inquire not after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. You shall not do so to Jehovah your God. For every abomination to Jehovah which he hates have they done to their gods. For even their sons and their daughters have they burnt in the fire to their gods. Human sacrifice, child sacrifice, Deuteronomy chapter 9. Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 7. Remember and forget not how you provoked Jehovah your God to wrath in the wilderness from the day that you did depart out of the land of Egypt until you came to this place. You've been rebellious against the Lord. Also in Horeb you provoked the Lord to wrath, so that he was very angry with you to have destroyed you. When I was gone up into the mountain to receive the tables of stone, even the tables of the covenant, which the Lord made with you, then I stayed in the mount 40 days and 40 nights. I neither did eat bread nor drink water. And Jehovah delivered me 2 tables of stone, written with the finger of God, and on them was written according to all the words which Jehovah spoke with you in the mount of the middle of the fire in the day of the assembly. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days and 40 nights, the Lord gave me the tables of stone, even the tables of the covenant. And the Lord said to me, Arise, get you down quickly from hence, for your people which you brought forth out of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They are quickly turned aside out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten image. Furthermore, the Lord spoke to me, saying, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Let me alone, that I may destroy them and blot out their name from under heaven, and I will make of you a nation mightier and greater than they. So I turned and came down from the mount. The mountain burned with fire, and the 2 tables of the covenant were in my hands. And I looked, and behold, you had sinned against Jehovah your God, and had made a molten calf. Again, they got this from Egypt, and it's no coincidence at this time when Moses was receiving the tables of stone that they made this golden calf. And it was most likely at the time in the month of Taurus when this happened, because that's the bull, and that's the Baals that they took from Egypt, and the symbol of Saturn. And they went astray right away when God brought them out of Egypt. So when we look at the book of Amos, chapter 5, Amos chapter 5, verse 21, I despise your feast days. I will not smell in your solemn assemblies. Though you offer me burnt offerings and your meat offerings, I will not accept them. Neither will I regard the peace offerings of your fat beasts. Take you away from me the noise of your songs. But let judgment run down as waters, and righteousness as a mighty stream. Have you offered to me sacrifices and offerings in the wilderness 40 years, O house of Israel? But you have borne the tabernacle of Moloch and Chiun, your images, the star of your God, which you made to yourselves. Therefore will I cause you to go into captivity beyond Damascus, says Jehovah, whose name is Jehovah of hosts. Chiun, Moloch. These were the practices that Israel went astray in, that came from the nations around them. And it had to do with human sacrifice. Human sacrifice for different advantage in these pagan religions. Now, this is made plain when we look at the translation here, Smith's Bible Dictionary. Chiun, statue, perhaps of Saturn, an idol made by the Israelites in the wilderness. Remphan. So when we look at the book of Acts, we see the same story being told here by Stephen. Acts chapter 7. Yes, you took up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star of your god Remphan. That star is the hexagram, rather. It is the symbol of Saturn. Figures which you made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. So they went astray, followed these other nations. These other nations still practice. There are people in this world in high positions of power that still follow this type of worship. Must understand that. And we're seeing that today, in this time. Now, International Standard Bible Encyclopedia, Kayun, thus Hebrew Kayun, is translated in Amos 5:26, the King James Version. The vowels represent assimilation to some such words as shekutz, detestable thing, or galol, idol, properly a filthy thing, in consonance with the well-known habit of the punctuators Moloch, with the vowel of boshet, shame. The Syriac version has preserved the correct vocalization. Apparently also the Septuagint, albeit the consonants have suffered corruption. There can be no doubt that we should vocalize Kiwan. The Assyrian Kayawanu equals Kayamanu, by which at least in late Babylonian Saturn was indicated. The passage in Amos refers to Saturn worship, which appears to have been in vogue in the prophet's days. Now, Saturn and Moloch and Baal, all these go together, and it's about human sacrifice and child sacrifice. Now, we have to look at current events today and see the symbols that are behind it. It's very alarming indeed. So take heed. Now, when we look at Remphan, the star of your god Remphan, Smith's Bible Dictionary says Kayun have been supposed to be the names of idol worship secretly by the Israelites in the wilderness. Kayun was a Hebrew or Semitic name, and Remphan an Egyptian equivalent substituted. This idol corresponded probably to Saturn or Moloch. The mention of Kayun or Remphan as worshipped in the desert shows that this idolatry was in part at least that of foreigners, and no doubt of those settled in Lower Egypt. So they took the worship of the heavens, especially, particularly Saturn worship. Saturn, when you look into Saturn, human sacrifice was done in worship of Saturn throughout history, and it was under the different names: Baal, Molech, Kayun, Remphan. Now, the symbols are everywhere of this, not just in the black cubes, but in one-eye symbolism. Um, this is, they say in the occult that Saturn was part of a golden age from the very beginning, and that golden age is going to come again. And when you talk about what has to take place before that counterfeit golden age comes, um, it's very disturbing. Now, Aleister Crowley called himself the Great Beast. He said, "Do as thou wilt." Do what you want, basically, your will, not the will of God, not the will of the God of the Bible, but do your own will. Whatever you want to do, find out your own will and live that. Raising up self, that's the ultimate, that's Satanism. That's your God. You are God. Do as thou wilt. Do whatever you want to do. You make yourself God. You raise yourself up to be God. That is the original lie of Lucifer in the garden. You shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And in this end time, we look at these ideas and the New Age and the occult. And Aleister Crowley himself said in one of his books, it was a book, let's see here, Magic in Theory and Practice. That's magic, M-A-G-I-C-K. It's ritual magic. It's real magic, ceremonial magic, and sacrifices done by these people. And Aleister Crowley talked about human sacrifice. He wrote about it. And he wrote books about all these magical, you know, incantations and different things of that nature. He was totally into this stuff. And so many people follow this man who died long ago. He wrote many books on it. He was known as the wickedest man on earth. And he was going to usher in the Aeon of Horus. And he wrote in his book, Magic in Theory and Practice, there is a magical operation of maximum importance, the initiation of a new aeon. When it becomes necessary to utter a word, the whole planet must be bathed in blood before man is ready to accept the law of Thelema, which is do as thou wilt. It says the great war must be fought. The bloody sacrifice is the critical point of the world ceremony, of the proclamation of Horus, the crowned corona and conquering child as Lord of the Aeon. Again, if you get where all this is going, it's speaking of a blood sacrifice that needs to take place before they can have their satanic new age, which is a Luciferian age of Aquarius, where man is God. And this is brought about, the symbolic, this is shown so often. For example, Hollywood, okay? You have it in the music industry. You have Madonna in 2019. All this stuff foreshadows, all the symbolism, like before 9/11, right? Before September 11th, 2001, there was Y2K in 2000. And Y2K works out to 9/11 when you look at numerology and letters and numbers, because Y is the 25th letter of the alphabet, and 5 plus 2, right? Or 25 plus 2 is 27. So 2 and 7 is 9, and K is 11. So you have 9 and 11. Now, this was foreshadowing 9/11 before it even happened. And the occult is all about doing that and showing people that symbolism subconsciously. It is revelation of the method. So again, y 25 plus 2, y2k 27. 2 plus 7 is 9, and the k is 11. K is special k. It's a high number to these people. 9/11. I've spoken about this 9/11 ritual that began then in 2001, and this is the culmination of it now. It is the end of it now, and it is a serious thing. And they are showing this in everything. I mentioned Madonna in 2019, before this chaos even started in the world. She was on stage at the Eurovision Song Contest. She has the X over the one eye, the eye patch. She has a big X and a black cloak that she's wearing. She is Saturn. This is all symbolic of Saturn. And dancing around her are sheep with gas masks on. And she sings the song and points at the audience and says, not everybody is coming to the future. Not everybody's learning from the past. Not everybody's coming to the future. Not everybody here is going to last. And she turns around and blows fire on the sheep. This is all symbolic of the times we are in right now. Sheep in gas masks, people wearing masks, bringing down the sheep. In the end, Jehovah separates the sheep from the goats. These people worship the goat. They worship Baphomet. They have their as above, so below religion. That is the beast out of the earth, the goat with two horns, speaks like a dragon. It has the power of Satan. It's the last beast that comes. And it's about bringing down this system in order to create and have a new system. And in all the writings of these people, a large portion of people have to go before that can be brought about. So think about these connections here. We see symbolism on television shows. There was a television show called Utopia that came out, a British version in 2013. Again, we see this eye patch, this man wearing an eye patch. And the show is about creating a virus, and then out of that giving people the cure for that virus, which actually is not good for them. And he says in that show, the villain, he says, you don't need a pandemic for people to take the vaccine. You just need the fear of a pandemic. And this is way back in 2013. Now in 2020, they came out with the American version of Utopia. And it's about the same thing, creating a story that there's a virus that's going to get everybody, causing fear. It's problem, reaction, solution. You create a problem. The reaction is fear. Again, we talked about in part 1, fear is the way to manipulate people. That's how people are manipulated the best, to cause fear and panic in people and terror. And then you can lead them around. And the solution. So you have the reaction, and then the solution is pre-made, which is taking place today, which started last year around this grand conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, where something started to go into the arms of people. Now a year later, around the same time, it's going into the arms of children. You must be awake and understand what I'm telling you. That these things don't come on you as a snare.